Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda,
And I'm Jake Bennett.
and welcome to episode 183 of the North Meet South Web Podcast.
Chicka chicka Janet. Hello, friends. It is once again that time of the week. It is Monday night, and it's dark out, and it's been dark for like the last 5 hours. I'm not digging this thing. And the thing is, I know it's going to get even worse because shortly they're going to change the time to be an hour. It's going to start getting dark at like 4 instead of 5.
Mhm.
Oh, I just hate this time of year. No fun, dude. No fun. And
Are you getting rid of daylight savings? Is that what's happening?
you know
Or
what,
is
man?
that
I feel like
still
I feel like they've been teasing us with this for forever.
right?
I
Yeah,
really
okay.
wish they would, but I don't know if they are. I don't know. I feel like last year it was like, this is the last year they're going to do it. And then it was like, psych or something. I don't know. We'll find
Yeah,
out.
okay.
We'll find out soon enough.
Find out when it happens. What
I
does it?
don't
Yes,
know.
not this weekend. Next weekend, daylight savings starts here. So we're the day's already getting longer. It's bright when you wake up. It's bright longer into the evening. So it's good for us because obviously it means you can get up a bit earlier and there is some sunlight, and you finish work at the end of the day and there is still sunlight. So
absolutely.
but it has been raining, which has made it difficult. Last episode we talked about my adventures with
hay fever
LawnHub and hay fever, yes, but LawnHub, and I had to go out and spray the weeds, and it says you're not supposed to do that if there's going to be rain within 4 hours. And when I'm planning this 10 days in advance, it's very hard to tell if there's going to be rain, because even if they can predict 10 days in advance, it's never correct.
No, it's super accurate. Yeah, exactly.
So, I got up on that day and I looked outside and I'm like, it doesn't look like it's going to rain. And then I went for a run in the morning, or I went for a walk in the morning, and I got rained on. And I thought, okay, well, this is not bode well. And then I waited a bit and there was no rain, and I checked the forecast and it said there's no rain due until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This is 10 in the morning. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out and I'll spray the weeds now. And I got almost finished and it started raining. 30 minutes later.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
pointless.
Come on.
I just wasted all that stuff.
Come on.
Yeah.
But it seems to have worked though, because I went out the next day and all of the weeds that I had sprayed had started drooping and stuff. So
yeah, it'll be fine.
The next one is in 14 days when I have to go out and spray the actual fertilizer on the lawn. Will be interesting. So I'm gonna see if I can go and hire a dethatcher or a scarifier, whatever they call it.
Yeah, sure.
To go and pull up all of the deadness from the surface of the lawn before I then go and put down the fertilizer, and hopefully that will help to rejuvenate.
Are you gonna aerate the soil too? You're gonna pull out the plugs and all that stuff, dude? You're gonna become one of those lawn guys?
No, I'm probably not gonna go that far. The scarifier I would do because it's like a machine that you can hire that goes through and does it. But anything that involves too much manual labor is something that I'm not that interested in. So I have as long as I fertilize the lawn, it tends to come up okay. It's when it starts to get cold and wet and I go, I'm not going to go out there and mow the lawn because it just turns to mush, right? And
absolutely.
You do that once, and then before you know it, the weeds grow, as high as your knees, and then you go on, and then you've got to go and mow it like 4 times just to get it down to level. And by that point, it's too late, and it's just turned into weeds. So,
hey, speaking of Scarify, Halloween is around the corner.
Yeah.
Do you guys do Halloween?
Although we've been invited to a Halloween birthday party, which
oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. So for how old is he?
9.
I don't remember if this is the older child or the younger child.
He's hanging out with the older kids these days. He's moving on up.
Yeah, he certainly is. Yeah, I am. It occurred to me that we one of the kids from school that lives like 2 doors down. He's in the year above Eli, and we went around with them. We went to the park. We had like a kick of the soccer ball. We played a bit of basketball. We pushed some kids on swings. It was a good bit of fun. And one of the other kids was there, plays in Eli's soccer team, and I was trying to put 2 and 2 together. Like how is this child friends with the older kid when he plays in Eli's soccer team? And it took me a while to realize that he is actually an older kid playing down a grade in soccer. So he is in the older kids year level. So
that's fun.
But they played together for 2 terms before I realized this.
That's fun. So, no, it's good. Probably good for Eli to play up with like a little bit older kids and stuff. And Yeah, I'm sure he gets, it's like you play to the level of your competition or of your teammates, I suppose. And
That's
so
right.
you
Yeah.
probably get better as you play. Yeah. So Harrison had a soccer game this last Saturday and scored 2 goals. He was
Nice.
practicing his hat trick dance if he got
Ah,
3
yes.
goals. And
If
so
you got
he
three,
had it
yeah.
all planned out. Oh, he wanted it so bad. He had a couple, like, he got 2 goals and then he
Mhm.
kicked a third. It was high. It had a lot of like spin on it, like hit right in front of the goal and
Yeah.
bounced backwards. Like I did not
Ah,
go into the goal. Yeah. Then he had a couple of those. Anyway,
so good.
it was fun. He almost made it. It was the last game of the season, so it was like his last chance to
Mhm.
get it. But no, it was all fun. All fun.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. When we started the show, we're like, what should we talk about? Well, I've got a couple things. First of all, have you ever seen these one-up arcade boxes? So like they're like not a full arcade cabinet, but like they're like mini arcade cabinets, if you will. So
Right.
like one-up arcade, Street Fighter,
Hmm.
they've got whatever. So David Hemphill and I are big into Street Fighter. We played Street Fighter when we were at Laracon this year. That was fun.
Mhm.
But I always wanted a little Street Fighter box, and so I found one on Facebook Marketplace. This guy was selling it for like $100. I'm like, why is he selling it for so
Nice.
cheap? Well, turns out he was trying to convert it to like a retro Pi, which is like a Raspberry Pi with like the software
Mhm.
installed on it that allows you to download ROMs and then use all this stuff. So he had done all the conversion on it. Like we have to swap out all the buttons. You have to buy this like LCD converter that will hook it up to whatever.
Mhm.
He'd bought all the
Mhm.
parts, had done all the things, and could not get the last step, could not get it to work. Just didn't have the chops. And so, or so I thought. And so I was like, well, I'll
Mhm.
figure this out. No big deal. Well, no, it's been sitting in my basement for 2 months and I have not been able to get it to work. And then I rewatched a couple tutorials and realized there was a ribbon cable that was flipped around the opposite way, turned it around,
Ah,
plugged it in. That was it, dude. I was off and running. And so that's been so fun. I've been playing
it's
with
wild
that.
that it's
Like,
something so simple.
oh,
But yeah, I
seriously. I mean,
suppose
it's just,
if you flip the pins, then it's
yes,
this is why PC cases always had the little notch, so you could never get it the wrong way
yes.
around.
Yep.
Because you don't want
Not this
to,
one.
you don't want to, yeah, you don't want to reverse
Yeah.
electricity going into
Polarity
a
or whatever.
motherboard.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly. And so anyway, dude, that's been so fun. And it's a really fun little like hobby project. Now the cool thing is like I didn't
Mhm.
have to pay $400 for it. I paid like $100 for it, and then
Yeah,
half the
it's
stuff
pretty
was already
good.
bought. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun just playing around with that. And me and Harrison played some Street Fighter today, and we both like that game. And so yeah, that's been pretty cool. So I would suggest that as a fun little hobby to anybody if they're interested. There's some cool little mods you can do out there with it, and it's pretty fun. So that's been cool.
Right.
Um,
We can buy these
yeah,
things here.
nice. Yeah,
Mortal Kombat Deluxe Arcade
yes.
Machine has 14 games. Mortal Kombat 1, 2, 3. There's some other Mortal Kombat and a few other random games on there. $1,000 plus delivery.
Yeah.
All right. Good
Yeah.
times.
Yep. So this one
Close
was
that before I spend money.
the price. Yeah, exactly. The price was right. Like it was way cheap, and I was like, yeah, I'll
Hmm.
try this out. So that's been kind
Yeah.
of fun to just mess around with, but and finally got it
Love it.
working. The other thing that I wanted to talk about though is we've talked a lot about the permissions stuff, right? And
Hmm.
so I want to sort of share the saga with you if I can. So we talked originally about how we went through all of our applications, and previously we only had roles, and we replaced any place where we are checking a role with a named permission. So instead of saying has role admin or has role manager, we would say, nope, what are we trying to do in this place? Oh, we're trying to edit a blog post. Okay, so we're going to replace that with a check to say permission enum edit blog post, right?
Hmm.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And then we used attributes to associate Active Directory group security group names with those permissions. And then in Active Directory, we just set those permissions, or we set those groups, those security groups on the particular users that need those things. It works great. Works really, really well. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Perfect.
We've had some other interesting solutions around that. Okay. That's that side of it. Now the question has been, where do we do those permission checks? And all we're doing with those permission checks is we're just doing gates, right? We're setting up gates
Yeah.
so that you can use Laravel's default can. You have can middleware, you have a can
Hmm.
directive, you have,
Hmm.
this authorize that you can use inside of the controller if your controllers are using the authorizable trait. You can do it inside of a form request. You can do it, a bunch of different places.
Yeah.
You can you could just use the gate facade. There's all sorts of ways that you can do this, right? And so the way that we had previously done it, like as our first step, is we just replaced any of the middleware checks in our routes file with can middleware checks, and totally fine. but that sort of broke down a little bit. We ended up having to like rearrange how our routes files were set up, and
Yeah,
you'd end up having to like break apart different pieces based
just to get the
on
granularity.
exactly. And so like you'd have a route file that would belong with another one like co-located with it that would have to be like further down, and then ended up
Mhm.
being like there'd be a merge conflict and somebody like fixed the merge conflict, but they accidentally moved one out of that
Yeah,
group, and so now it was
yeah,
without permissions because it's just like in the routes file. And so
yeah.
I was like, we can't do that anymore.
Mhm.
We've got to. It just did not feel like it was close enough to the metal. It just felt like it was so sort of like out there and removed.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so, so first off, like, do you identify with that at all? Like, do you feel that? Like, you ever feel like if you're doing a middleware check or a can check out at the edge there on the routes file, does that
Mhm.
ever make you feel a little bit like, feels a little too fragile?
I don't know off the top of my head anywhere where we are doing an authorization check in our routes file. Like maybe
Okay,
very high level, but nothing granular. I think all of that
sure. Like,
granularity, all
yeah,
those
sure. Like,
permission checks will push down into a form request or into like an action class if we want to enforce that behavior deep into the business rules of that behavior. But typically it'll be in the authorized method of a form request or inside of like an action class somewhere where we're authorizing that.
okay. So that brought me to my next step, which was okay. So if we're not going to do it in the middleware, we have we can do it inside of each controller method,
Hmm.
right? So if we're
Hmm.
using resourceful controllers, we can just do a this authorize
Yeah.
or request authorize or whatever it is. This authorize, and that's going to pass in the user, and then you can just pass in the permissions check, which is fine.
Mm.
That works great. But it's like I sort of hate having to have those at the top of every controller method. It sort of sucks. And
Hmm.
so you have some options, right? Um, One option that was really interesting and attractive to me was that if you're dealing with a resource like a blog post, for example, instead of having to put that in every single method, this gate check or this authorized check, in the constructor, you could say this authorized resource, and then you could point it at the policy that you had created if you created a policy like a post
Hmm.
policy, and then you could do your gate checks in there. So inside of that you could just kind of say, here are the different view, any view, edit, update, whatever,
Mm.
and you would just say authorized resource, here's the policy, and then it would automatically apply the correct policy check to the proper method, which was
Yeah.
amazing. I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move everything to policies now, everything to
Hmm.
policies, and then we'll do our permission checks inside of those policies. So we know, like, okay, you go to the controller's going to have an authorized resource, and then at the top you're going to click through that, and that's going to get you to your policy, and the policy is going to define the different permissions that they need in order to be able to do these things. Very well organized, very clean, super nice, loved it.
Yeah.
And then Laravel 12 came along, and Laravel 12 basically nukes all of that. It does not
Mm.
use the authorized resource anymore. It is not in the docs anymore. And now it's back to all the docs recommend using gate dodop authorize inside of every controller method. And I'm
Hmm.
just like, I hate this. I really hate how it looks. And so I know what
Hmm.
you're saying is you just use a form request in that case,
Yeah.
right? If you want to do that authorization check, you're just going to say I am going to do that inside of a form request for every method inside of all those controllers, right?
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Is that how you would do it?
Yeah. And we also typically use a lot of single action controllers
Mm-hmm.
because we're not building a cruddy app really.
Yeah.
We have lots of components, and components make requests to specific routes,
Endpoints. Yeah. Sure.
endpoints that are responsible for doing particular things. So, yeah, we will typically have an action that is called from a controller that is past a request object, which is responsible for doing the authorization. And whether it's a get endpoint or an index endpoint, where like some things don't need to be authorized, and so the authorized method of that form request will just return true. But
Yeah. Sure.
there will be some index methods where we do need to do those checks in there, and so we will do the authorization inside of a otherwise empty form request, but it gives us, extra files around the place, but they are consistently named and consistently located. So if we have like a user index controller, for example, then we would also have a user index request that goes in, the request folder or whatever. But if you are using your fuzzy finder in your editor, you're going to type, user index, and you will see the request and the controller there next to each other. So it's easy enough to find them. And then you'll also have the user index action, perhaps. And so all of this stuff, because it's got like a common prefix, it all comes up when you're searching for it. Your mileage may vary depending on whether or not you're navigating the file tree or if you're using fuzzy find.
Sure.
Obviously,
Sure.
as a Vim user, my hands are on the keyboard, so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's more common that I will find things that way. And that also then extends to tests. Like if you've got a user index test, for example, or a user index controller test, whatever you want to call it, all of these things will appear, at the top of your search anyway. So it makes it easier from that perspective to locate things rather than having to traverse the directory tree to look in like a request folder or a controllers folder or wherever else. It's all just there. So yeah, more files, but they're typically very small files. But also then allows us to co-locate that behavior where it makes the most sense. Requests and authorization kind of go together. Controllers are really just for delegating, taking some data, passing it to some action and returning some response. But they're typically, no more than 5 or 6 lines long.
Right. Yeah. And I think for me, I get it. Like I'm not necessarily so concerned with making new form requests for every single thing, although it does sort of suck, honestly. And I think it's just because it's like, how many levels of indirection do I have to have before I finally get down to the thing? You know what I mean? Because it's like the reason we organized it around policies is because we're like, okay, great, we're going to treat them as resources. Okay, so now we have policies. Wonderful. But now it's like we're sort of saying, well, I mean, maybe it's a policy, but we're basically going to have a form request for every single one of them anyway. So what's the point of having the policy? Like now so now I go route controller method form request authorize policy then permission. I mean, holy crap, that's like 7 layers of indirection to get down to the actual permission check. It's crazy. And so it's like, if you're going to do that, if you're going to do a form request, it almost feels like you could do without the policy, because like I'm not using it almost anywhere else except for in the controller. And so, if I'm going to create the form requests, I almost don't want to create the policies because I don't want to do one more layer.
Yeah. It also depends. Like if you're very resource-centric, as it seems to be that you are, then
I mean,
the policies
sometimes
do make sense. But we definitely err on the side of not having resources. Like we're not updating people and businesses and addresses and things like that as commonly as we are adding a person to application or add address to person or all of this kind of stuff where these actions kind of dictate what's happening. And so whether or not you have access to do that action is kind of decoupled from the resource itself. Whereas because you've got the policies and that kind of stuff, you're more leaning towards that side of things. So it probably makes more sense to use the policies. But I still think, the form requests just make a consistent, it's 7 layers and it's more things, etc. But it's always going to be in the same place. You don't have to stop and think, oh, hang on, this is an index method. Where do I authorize this now? No, it just goes in the form request. Like, yes, extra file, yes, extra location, potentially like if you're doing the policy and, but it means that you can guard those things directly as well using the policies.
Yeah.
Where you're not necessarily encapsulating business logic behind a request or an action or whatever else.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the last piece with the form request thing. So like there are places where we do have more intense sort of policy logic. So for example, I'll have like a coaching entry, right? And for that, a coaching, and like if somebody, the ability to be able to view a coaching entry depends on if it is like if the person that's logged in, if their user ID is the person that is like, they're the coachable team member ID
Mm-hmm.
or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're the person who's being coached. So if it belongs to them, they can see it. Or if it is a person who directly manages them. So if they're anywhere within, or indirectly or directly manages them, if they're anywhere in the tree of that
Mm-hmm.
person's purview, they can be seen, right? Where does that live? That has to live inside the policy. That's the logical
Mm-hmm.
place for it to live. My
Mm-hmm.
question is, if I'm doing that, does the, so like, let's say the view coaching entry request, right? Or is it coaching
Mm-hmm.
entry view request? Which one is it? Coaching entry show request? Is that what you'd call it?
Yeah, show coaching entry request, I think.
Okay. So verb and then model and then,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
show coaching entry request. If I do that,
Mm-hmm.
does the show coaching entry request authorize method have access to the ID or to the currently hydrated, eager loaded model binding, right? Does that make sense?
For the for the related entry.
Right. So like, so when you do, you have implicit route model binding, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
it will automatically pull the ID, it says here's the ID.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and grab that particular type hinted model out of the database, or I'm going to 404.
Mm-hmm.
And then you use that in the
Mm-hmm.
policy to then check against, is this current coaching entry, you inspect it basically to determine if the person who's currently logged in can see that thing or not.
Yeah.
So my question is, does the authorized method have access to that particular model, so that when I'm saying this arrow authorize post
Mm-hmm.
class comma, or just say like view comma, and then I pass in that particular post?
Yeah. Well, the route model binding stuff is done up the stack and then passed down into the request. So you do have access to the route and all of its bound parameters at that point. Yeah.
So yeah, like in the controller, typically you have like, the way that the implicit route model binding works is, in the controller you have request, type
Mm-hmm.
hinted request, $ request,
Mm-hmm.
comma,
Mm-hmm.
type hinted coaching entry, $ coaching
Mm-hmm.
entry, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then in the controller you have access to that thing. So what I'm saying is, I don't know how to get access to the coaching entry, $ coaching entry,
Yeah.
from the authorized method, because I would
Yeah.
need that
And
in order to be able to do my policy check.
yes. So previously you'd have to do like this route and then pass it the string name. I
Mm-hmm.
think in Laravel 12 they introduced the thing so you can use an attribute to then bind that directly out of the route. So you can, I think it's pound square bracket route and then give it the thing, and then you can actually inject a properly typed um, class or instance there, so that you will get the completion and you get all of that stuff there, and Laravel will then handle injecting that from the request automatically or
Because
from the
doesn't that
route.
feel like, so if I'm just, I'm discovering the solution here with you. I'm talking it through
Mhm.
because I'm interested in how kind of this works. To me, it feels a little bit gross that like I have it type hinted inside the controller. Like, and I know the name of it, I know the variable and all that stuff, but the form request does not have that.
Mm.
It doesn't know, it doesn't have any idea of that route model binding thing. It doesn't know. And so it's like I have to either, you know, duplicate that inside of the form request, or I have to somehow pass it in. I'm wondering, like, what is Team Laravel doing for this? Like, it seems
Mm.
like this is not how I would think that it would be done. Like,
Yeah.
it seems too chaotic. I just am like, there's got to be a way that either they're doing it a certain way that they're not super stoked with, and they're just sort of doing it, or B, they're doing it a different way that I'm completely unaware of, or
Mm.
C, I just don't like it and they don't give a crap. They don't care at all. It's fine. It's fine for them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Nuno, I think Nuno was posting something about this the other day. I saw a screenshot. See, they're just calling request validate. Oh no, this is the MCP tools thing. I'm sure I saw that he tweeted somewhere. In Laravel MCP, tools, prompts, and resources share the same API, request handle response. Similar to controllers in Laravel, you can validate input, dispatch actions, and more. But this is calling request validate. This is not talking about authorization. I'm certain in one of Nuno's streams or videos that he posted, he did talk about how he goes through this, which I assume would be very similar to how they're doing it in Laravel Cloud at the very least, because he had a heavy hand in the architecture of that platform. So it would definitely be good to gauge some, because I know that you brought this up in Cash Money, and
Yeah.
David Hemphill and I were very much aligned in this in terms of using form requests for everything and handling the authorization that way. So I think
So
I,
like,
I think this is where it kind of comes down to, there are many different ways of doing these things in Laravel, and it varies case by case, app by app. Some things make sense in some contexts that are different in others, and it's hard to find like the one prescribed way of doing it.
yeah.
But yeah, I
I
know.
I just want to be consistent, and it's just
Yeah.
every time I feel like I've got it nailed down, there's like some weird edge case thing that's like, well,
Hmm.
except for that, then you have to do it a different way. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
dang it all. I don't want to do it a different way. I want to do it the
Yeah.
same way every time. Like, and it just feels like I can't find that way. I thought
Hmm.
I had. I thought I did. I actually did have it when I had that authorized resource thing. It was working perfectly. Now I can't.
Yeah. I
It's
mean, that's
I'm
that's
screwed.
gone from the controller because the base controller is gone, but you can still use the trait directly if you wanted to. You can always bring
Well,
that base controller
no,
back if you wanted to.
you can,
Or is it
but you have
gone?
to extend, like, if you do that, the way that they do the middleware on the controllers is also different now,
Right. Okay.
because
Yeah,
they've
because it's
removed
a
that
method
construct
now.
middleware. Yeah,
Mm.
they've removed that. And so you have to have, like, there's like a public static function middleware on every controller, but the authorized resource uses that middleware the way that it was previously written, which is why I think they
Hmm.
removed it from the docs. It was like, no, we're not going to do this anymore. Like, you have to
Mm.
extend a different type of. Um, I looked into it. It's just you have to do something funky. It's definitely not the direction the framework is going, which I'm fine with saying we're going to stick with where the framework is going. I'm fine with changing. I just don't feel like I have a clear picture of like how it is. And again,
Hmm.
maybe it's they are just like, no, no, no. There is a clear picture. The clear picture is do a gate authorized check in every single controller method. I'm just like, ick. I don't like that. That's the
Hmm.
only thing. Um,
Yeah.
and
I
so
found
maybe
I found Nuno's tweet about it. It was from the 29th of January. So some things just stick in my head better than others. But he said, yes, authorization on my form request. I typically test form request on my controller tests. So I linked it to you. I have a link for you in the show notes. Basically, he's got a controller which has a method that injects the request, and the assumption is that the authorization has already happened in the request, and the validation obviously then happens in the form request implicitly, and then it's just a matter of calling the action handle method and returning a response from the controller.
okay, so here's my only this is my only hang up, right? And you may have an answer to this, you may not. If I have a item, if I'm if I'm editing an item, okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I am getting that through the controller method, not store, not like a new one, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
editing or I'm viewing
Mm-hmm.
one that already
Mm-hmm.
exists. How can I reference that item that's coming in my form request in the authorize method? That's it. If I could figure that out, I feel like I'm good. And I want that to be actually a good answer. Like, I don't want it to be some janky, like I have to pull it from the route thing. Like, I want it to like,
Yeah, but this is the route parameter attribute that you would hint that in that authorized method, and it should inject it for you that way.
okay,
That's how I believe it's meant to work. So storage, give that route parameter attribute. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and I would say the only piece to me that still feels incomplete on that is that I have to have that in both my controller and my form request. That same variable. I have to keep it in. I have to keep it consistent. My refactor
Yes.
tools are not going to know that those are going to need to change together.
No, they won't. No, but you need, well, yeah, you need to put them in both places anyway. If you need both of them to be aware of it, it's no different than passing it down into an action or sending it somewhere else. Like those things just need to know
Well,
about it.
except for from there, I'm passing it from the controller into the action,
Mm, mm,
right? And so I can see it in the controller. It's like it's right
yeah,
there. I can see the name
yeah.
of the variable. I know I have that available to me in the controller. And so
Hmm.
then it's no problem. I just,
I
it's like,
mean,
it's,
if you wanted to, if you wanted to, you could then you could then type the route parameter in both of them rather than relying on the implicit injection into the controller method. So rather than
go ahead.
Yeah, so rather than in your controller method doing, binding the model directly, you could just say route parameter, because that
okay.
route parameter attribute is an attribute that targets parameters. So you could do it on a controller's edit method. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That, without running the code, looking at it, that certainly seems to be the case.
Okay. I need to find the documentation for that, for what you're talking about. Is it an attribute, that route attribute?
Yeah, contextual attributes, I think, is what they're called in the documentation.
Okay.
Contextual attributes, yeah, as part of the service container documentation.
Contextual attributes.
Route parameter. And then, so you say like the route parameter would be coaching as a string. And then you would have a, coaching, $coaching equal, and put it in the definition that way.
I'm curious if when I get it that way, if it's actually going to give me, is it just going to give me the value, the ID that's being passed through? So I have to look it up again.
It'll do the casting for you.
It will do that.
It's basically an explicit model binding. Like you're saying, take this thing explicitly from the route, right? The ID of the coaching model, and then it will handle casting that into a coaching
I see it.
model.
Yep.
And it does a container make from the request and gets that route parameter, and then you get that back because it's an attribute that you have now typed as a method parameter. You'll get the type of that thing, knowing that it is an instance of whatever it should be out of the route, which in this case
interesting. So I could do that inside of the form request
and the controller. Yeah, I mean it doesn't stop the like I've got to put it in two places. But
yeah, or maybe it actually, I wonder if it actually also makes two queries.
That would be the thing to check for. I mean, it's pulling it out of the route, so it's set on the route there.
Yeah.
So worth exploring. I wouldn't go and refactor.
I'm still not super. Yeah, well, so that's where we're at. It's like we're already going through the process of refactoring the code base. So I'm pulling my hair out, trying to figure out, okay, we're doing this once. How do we want to do it? And I just don't feel like I have a good answer. So
yeah,
so what I know I can do is the easy way that's ugly is just do the gate authorized check at the top of every controller method and call it good. And it is ugly, but it's effective and it works every time. Like,
yeah, I mean there are some ugly things and there are some paper cuts in the framework that I don't know that there are good solutions for. And like I know that Taylor likes to go through and find these paper cuts and clean them up, but there are just some things that I think can't be cleaned up. I mean, I say that now. Maybe in 6 months he'll have one of those light bulb moments and figure out how to do it. But yeah, the form request and the controller are kind of different contexts as well, even though they're coupled. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Very interesting. I'd be interested to hear where you land on it though. When you
figure
it out.
I think if I'm just trying to be like, if I'm trying to be as consistent and as like pragmatic as I could be, I think ideally I would like to put it in the form request. I would like to just always have a form request object, always have an authorized method, and always be checking the policy in that spot. And then I think the only trick I have to figure out is how I can make sure that I have access to that model that is bound, the implicit binding. And if I can figure that out, then I'm good to go. And I'll let you know kind of where we land on that.
Yeah. Excellent.
Cool. Okay. Yes. All right. What time are we at here? 34? All right. Yeah. We got anything else we want to talk about before we go, or are we good?
No. I mean, we talked about the Salesforce mocking thing last episode, which I'm still working my way through because I realized today that at some point during the AI writing the code, it deleted a whole bunch of code that I
Oh,
thought we had
fun.
written. So, and I'm not sure, like, I don't know if I'd stashed it and then dropped the stash because I thought I wasn't working on that anymore. But it likes to be very verbose. And so, what I have found through this process is that a lot of stuff you end up doing multiple times because you get the first cut and then you have to like tidy it up and then it like starts doing weird things. Like I said, I want you to bind a faker instance to the container. So it went and actually bound. I said I wanted to use dependency and injection. And so it went and then bound an instance of faker to the container rather than just injecting it as a constructor property. So there's just things like that. And I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I will just do this myself. Like you have given me enough of the skeleton that I can go and make the rest of this work. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going round and round in circles. So I did
Yeah.
find though, I'm using, I think we spoke about open code last time. I'm using that. They're offering Grok Code Fast for free for a period of time while they're testing it out
Nice.
with their stuff. And I think it tends to produce results, like good enough results, much quicker because it doesn't spit out all of the like thought process that it's going through. Where Claude and the Sonnet model will say, I'm doing this, I'm looking at this, oh, this didn't work, I'm gonna like go and investigate this, whatever. Like it's very verbose in terms of describing what it's doing. Grok code seems to just like do it and then go, here's the result at the end, which, depending on who you are, may or may not be a better option. But I
Sure.
found towards the end of last week that Grok code was certainly producing results much quicker, where Sonnet kept on timing out. But I think Claude had some issues last week and they made some tweaks to their models or something like that. So maybe that came into play because it seems to be working okay again today. So anyway, I don't know. I think our code base is quite large, and some of the stuff that's in there may impair more than impact what it's doing. So yeah, it certainly has gotten through a lot of the boilerplate and a lot of the things that I wouldn't want to do, like coming up with mock responses for Salesforce requests. Like it's figured out what they should look like and the shape of the responses and generating all of the bodies. So it's been very good at that. But in terms of tying all the pieces together, I'm not stoked with it, to be honest. Now,
Yeah.
whether or not that's like the model is not capable of it, or I'm not capable of steering the model at this stage, is unclear. But it's just a frustrating thing, and it's turning into a bit of an abusive relationship now because every time I say, "Nah, this is crap. I'm not going to use this anymore. I'm going to do it myself," I find my way back to it and try again anyway. Maybe this time it'll be different. So
You're codependent.
it's no good. But I feel
There's gonna be a whole
there's
industry popping up around like AI, like
yeah
relationship coaching.
yeah there's we'll probably wrap on this, and maybe I'll get your opinion on it, and then we can wrap. But I feel like there's a big push as an industry. Like you see it all the time. Companies are saying you've got to use AI. We're not hiring any more staff unless you can show that you've exhausted all avenues with AI and whatever else. Like, so there's that whole school of thought going on. And um, I feel like as engineers, as developers that have been in the game for a long period of time, that have like done all of the work by hand for a long period of time, sitting there and watching the computer write the code for you, it's like, what am I being paid for now to like sit there and just what, like, I feel very dirty about it. Whereas some people are like, this is great, I can get more done. I don't feel like it's made me quicker. I feel like it has certainly written more code than I could have over the same period of time. I don't think it's produced the same amount of output and the same amount of value as I could in that same amount of time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So do you feel like it's actually made you less efficient, but it's easier for you?
I don't think it's made me more,
not less efficient, less
yeah.
productive. Do you feel like you're
Yeah, I
producing
feel like,
less?
yeah, because like I'm not doing it. I'm watching the computer do it, right? But I
Sure.
feel like what it's producing, I still need to go over, and there's a lot of untangling going on there. So I'm watching the computer write the code for hours of a day or across a week, hours of that week, and it's like, well, what am I supposed to be doing while it's churning out code, and then it's finished. Okay, now I've got to go and look at it. No, that's no good. Figure out how we're going to fix it. Okay, then off it goes again. It's like, I don't know. As someone who has always written the code, it's like I understand that I get, you get paid to do the work, but now I'm not doing the work, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
am I being paid for here?
Are you using it in like planning mode first to kind of get it all set up?
Yeah.
And then okay,
Yeah.
so you're doing it that way. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I honestly I wish I could tell you. I feel like tomorrow I actually told Andy Hinkle, I was like, dude, you're gonna do a teaching Tuesday for us tomorrow, and you're gonna show us how you actually go through with Claude and with Cursor and how you actually go through. What's your process? How do you set it up in planning mode? What are the things that you're prompting it with, and whatever. And there are little things like, so today he went through and was like, here are all the strings that I want to have a passing test for, that it should have this output, and here are all the ones that I have strings that should be ignored, and this is what it should be, whatever. And then he said, I need a regex that solves all of these. And it was like, okay, let me do this. And he's like, no, start with TDD first. Like, write the test. So I was like, okay, I'm write the test. And then he's like, okay, now write your regex. And it wrote a single regex that solved all of those, and it passed all the tests. And it's like, okay, pretty sweet. Like, because Andy's he's good with, I don't think he has ever had to use or like had to know exactly what the regex was. Most of the time you can just kind of like Google it and like, okay, I need a regex for a phone number.
Yeah.
Great, there we go. I don't know what it means, but like whatever.
Regexes, yeah.
Totally. And like, I love regex stuff. And so like for me, it's very interesting to kind of pull it apart and whatever. But it's like, does it really necessary for him to learn all that? Or can he just prompt the AI to do that? And so it's like, there are instances where it's like very useful for that sort of stuff. So, and it was stupid. It would be stupid for him to write that code because, it can write it for him. And so,
for those kinds of things, like I have definitely found that it's quite good at it. Especially, when we've been wanting to figure out, like we have in the Salesforce library, everything that like runs a raw query against the Salesforce endpoint, it just sends an execute query request. So it could be doing a select from contacts or accounts or whatever else. So the only way to kind of figure out what kind of request is actually being sent in order for us to be able to then fake the response is to inspect the query string. And so like it's kind of figured out initially that it was writing a regex. I'm like, I think this is a bit overkill, because I was looking at this regex and I'm like, that looks very complicated. Let's maybe just use a string contains here and just look for like, if the query string contains from account, it means that we're doing an account lookup so we can return the account. If it, all of that kind of stuff. But it's, there are things, I haven't formulated a concrete opinion on it yet. There are certainly things that it can do and does well. Like I love using it to go and fix PHP stand violations. Because it's like, I don't want to go through that. Especially when you update a patch release and end up with 90 or whatever stand violations that weren't there before the update, like I did yesterday. But there are also things that even guided, like, okay, I want you to create a registry of these things, or I wanted to, if you're very specific and very guided, it can go and generate a lot of code, but then you got to go and look at it, because it doesn't do things quite as well as I would hope for code that I want to ship into production, because the AI may have written it, but then I have to support it. So that's the main thing. Like you do still need to understand it in a professional capacity. Like if you're a non-programmer and you're just trying to bring your ideas to life. I spoke to a friend the other day who's a UX researcher, and he built this thing that does some analysis. I don't want to go too much into it because he's still building it out, but he built this as like a next app, and like all of this stuff. It does all the analysis. It provides reports. It shows you all these different things that over the last month and a half, 2 months, he's built himself. Because he knows like what comes out the other side of it. He knows what he's expecting there. But if you looked under the hood of all of that code, it's not going to be something that you'd want to maintain. For that use case, where you're building something that you would not have otherwise had the time, the capability, the money to do, it doesn't matter. But he's providing value in the outcomes. So, but as a software I keep saying engineer, as a software developer, I find myself endlessly frustrated by what it puts out, and I'm not not convinced by it.
Yeah. Yep. Like I said, it always, the answer is it depends, right?
Yeah.
As with anything.
Yeah.
As with anything. All right, my friends, why don't we wrap it there? This is going to be episode 183. 183.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for hanging out with us, folks. Find those show notes for this episode at northmeetsouth.audio/183. Hit us up on Twitter, on X, on Blue Sky, at Michael Dorinda, at Jacob Bennett, or at North South Audio. And if you like the show, rate it up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be incredible. Thanks, folks. Until next time, we'll see ya.